What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to take you on the journey of how my tank went from this to this due to an asterina starfish outbreak, and my tank would eventually go from this to this. And it all started a few months before I moved out of my old house. I noticed a few asterina starfish in my tank. I knew it was something I needed to address quickly. In this hobby, you put something off, it can be devastating. But I was preparing to move in a month or two. So I figured when I broke my tank down and moved it and set it back up, I would address the situation then. So I broke the tank down, I moved it over to the new house, I got it set up, I got all the coral in it, and as you can see, like fireworks out of the rocks came the asterina starfish. Hundreds and hundreds of asterina starfish all over my back wall, all over my rock. And then I noticed something really bad. They were actually starting to consume my coral because there was no more coralline algae for them to feed on. So I did what most reefers would do. I went and I got a harlequin shrimp and I put him in the tank. I watched for a couple of weeks as the starfish population grew and grew and grew. At this point, I had realized that I was too late adding the harlequin shrimp into my tank. The population of starfish had increased so much that there was no way he could ever keep up. So I decided at that point to add a second harlequin shrimp into the tank and see if the pair of them could tackle this pest problem. I watched as they came out in the evenings, grazed on the starfish, and I thought, let's give them a month or two and see if that works. So after about 7 to 8 weeks of the harlequin shrimp being in the tank, I was still overpopulated with starfish. It was at this point that I decided it's time for plan B, it's time to break down the tank. As you can see here, I had taken all of my rock work out during the daytime because I noticed during the day I didn't see a lot of asterina starfish on the outsides of the rocks or all over the back walls, which made me think maybe they were going inside of the rock work during the day because it was usually at night during the lunar cycle when it was just the blue lights on that I would see them come out and cover all the walls of the tank. So during the day, while most of the starfish were inside of the rocks, I decided to pull out every piece of rock that I could and replace it with new rock. Now I had 500 or 600 pounds of rock sitting in buckets, so I decided to pull out a few that I liked. I let them soak a couple days in advance before I began this process. But I knew that when I added in all this new rock, not only was I decimating the population of asterina starfish, I was also decimating my beneficial bacteria population. So I knew that after this transition happened, I was going to be battling nitrates and phosphates and ammonias until I could get my bacteria population built back up. But at this point I had no other choice. So I removed all the rock work out, I made me a little makeshift scraper tool, and I began scraping every asterina starfish I could find. Now I want you to keep in mind that during this process, all of my coral and all of my fish were still in my system. They were still in my tank. I didn't have the opportunity to have any quarantine tanks set up at this point, but I had to make this maneuver now. I couldn't wait any longer. So I began removing them by hand with my little scraper cup that I designed. I removed all of the rock work out. All of my coral I put on the bottom floor of the tank, and I pushed towards the front of the tank so that I could begin my re-rockscaping. It was difficult actually to even rockscape my tank with all of my fish and my coral in the tank while I was doing it. It made it really a lot more difficult. I had to move coral from one side of the tank to the other side of the tank to build one spot to build another one. But something magnificent happened during this whole process. I've never been a creative artist when it comes to rockscaping my tanks. A lot of my tanks have looked like your typical pile of rocks or two separate piles of rocks with a couple maybe archways connecting them together. And as you can see, my rockscape was kind of taking shape, kind of taking form. But a lot of the rock was just kind of sitting on each other as I was playing with it and trying to figure out exactly what I wanted my tank to look like. Because unlike starting a new tank and going out and buying your first few frags, I already had tons of coral. I knew how I wanted them to look, what coral I wanted to be together on one side, what coral I wanted on the other side. I just had to get my rockscape there so that I could accomplish the coral placement that I wanted. Now at this point I had realized that I had broken the #1 rule in the hobby, and that is when you see an issue with your system, address it immediately. Never put off till tomorrow what you can accomplish today. I thought because I was moving in a month or two that it would be okay to let the asterina starfish do their thing until I got moved into the new house, and then I would address the problem. And by putting off that problem, it caused me to have to re-rockscape my entire tank. But I'm happy to say that after all of this journey, all of my corals survived. They're all thriving, full polyp extensions. They look great. The coral that were being eaten by the asterina starfish have come back. They have full polyp extension, and areas that have been eaten have actually been covered with new polyps. So all in all, while it was a bad experience to have to go through, I actually ended up building one of the best rockscapes, in my opinion, that I've ever built myself. My coral placement is exactly what I wanted, and I have the flow within my rock work that I've been striving for in order to help with that detritus buildup, in order to help with that random flow within the system. And I'm happy to say that the tank is doing fantastic. All of the fish survived. They're doing fantastic. And all of my coral are bright, full polyp extension, open, and thriving. So for all of you out there, if you ever see something going wrong with your system, address it immediately. Don't put it off. Even if you're a seasoned reefer, you should know better. I knew better. But my excuse was, I'm moving in a month and a half. Why bother? I'll deal with it when I get moved. But all in all, the asterina starfish population is decimated. There's a few I see here and there. And I believe here soon I'm going to have to start actually hand feeding my Harlequin shrimp starfish. So I'm going to have to start actually taking frozen starfish and cutting them up into pieces and feeding them. Because once your Harlequin shrimp run out of starfish to eat, they'll starve and die. So you either have to give it back to the shop you bought it from. Hopefully you can get a trade. Maybe give it to somebody else or sell it to someone else having an asterina pest problem. Or you have to start feeding it starfish to keep them alive. And I believe that's what I'm going to do because they've been a nice addition to my tank. I really like them. I really like getting great footage of the Harlequin shrimp, and you can find some of that on my YouTube channel. If you guys like the video, give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next one. Say bye, Milo.